Have you ever heard the phrase, conflict reveals character? Well, if you haven't heard it, you've heard it now. Conflict reveals character. One of the things that I presume is that I can get along with a whole lot of people quite nicely when we're conflict free. You agree with me, I agree with you. We have similar preferences and priorities, and we're rolling along real smoothly in life, and whatever projects and shared events that we have, we're doing really well. I can be a nice guy, and you can probably be a nice person too, but you really know the mark of an individual's character when conflict arises. Now, I've entitled today's talk, The Number One Way to Identify a Narcissist, and it's simply this. Watch how an individual responds to conflict. Now, when you're dealing with a narcissist, there are kind of two different ways that we can look at this notion of conflict. One is we can say that you might have an immediate conflict. There's a specific event in front of you, whether you're talking about something at work or within the family or trying to make plans with them about something and a conflict, a difference arises, then you're going to see what they're like. Or we can be talking about a conflict of a more long-term nature, where it's just obvious that we're not going to agree, we're not going to have the same kind of preferences and priorities on a broad array of issues. And again, it can be at work, an extended family, or people that you've been close to. And so in that case, the conflict may be an ongoing kind of thing. But in the moments of conflict, you're going to notice how healthy or not an individual is. Now, in healthy relationships, we start with the presumption that conflict is going to happen. And I'm not necessarily threatened by conflict. It's not necessarily my favorite thing. But at the same time, it just doesn't blow me away to think that somebody has different preferences from me. Narcissists don't think that way. In fact, when you talk with a narcissist and it's obvious that the two of you are not on the same page, they can be highly tense and agitated very quickly. And it's obvious that they are going to go straight into that high control mode because that's part of the defining feature of narcissism. They're going to want to establish their superiority. They show no particular care or regard for you. All of those narcissistic characteristics come forward. So when you're in a conflict with that narcissist, whether it's one of those short-term kind of immediate situations or a long-term conflict, there are several different kinds of patterns that tend to come into play. And I want to see if I can run through them, and then we're going to figure out what we can learn from this. First, and this is no shocker, in conflict with the narcissist, the anger can arise quickly from seemingly nowhere. Many narcissists can be angry and agitated and tense just on the spur of the moment, and you're wondering, where does that come from? Well, where it comes from is it's just right there on the edge of their personality to begin with. They can appear friendly at times, but then there's this self-preservation element inside of them, which is the beginning point of the anger that's just waiting to come out, and so the anger takes very little provocation to show up. In addition, they have an absolute unwillingness to listen or ponder or understand anything to do with you. In their mind, it's like, why would I need to do that? I don't care about you. And so their lack of regard for whatever's on the inside of you shows up in the midst of that conflict. Now, they can seem to be understanding and caring in the midst of pleasantness and coordination, but in conflict, they can't do that. Or, in addition, one of the primary patterns that comes up is they use quick accusations. They go straight into the blame game. Whenever there's a pattern between you and them and you're not on the same page, immediately they look for fault. And they look for the question, who in here is the bad guy? And guess who that's going to be. Along with that, then you're going to see a lot of insults and criticisms. There can be name calling and lies and cursing and foul kind of communication because that's what they do. It's their way of trying to demean you. And in conflict, it's like they can't maintain their decorum. They can't maintain their decency, and out comes all of this really harsh kind of communication. Sometimes when you're in conflict with that narcissist, and again, short-term or long-term, they may avoid the immediate or the obvious topic. and they may change the subject, or they may shift. And if, particularly if they think you're gaining some points against them, it's like, well, yeah, but what about this over here? And so they can shift around, and they can be very elusive in the way that you're trying to discuss with them, because they don't want to feel pinned down. Now, in addition to that, if you do call them out on anything, then they're going to go into a high justification and rationalization mode. Let's suppose there's something simple, and you're saying, well, I noticed you had this going on, but I was hoping it would be that, and you're just trying to come up with a little procedural adjustment with them. Then they could, instead of saying, oh, okay, well, let's talk about that, they justify, they rationalize, and they go into a very strong defensive mode. Another very common pattern is they create revisionist history. Now, this is especially true when you have long-term ongoing conflicts with someone. As you try to talk with them about some of the things that have gone on between the two of you that are not good, then they can say things like, no, I don't think that's the way it happened, or you got that wrong, or if you think that somebody else was thinking that way, I know better than that. And so they're constantly changing the way the history is supposed to be interpreted. And then in addition, many times, particularly when they feel like they might be losing ground, they go into the silent treatment. And it's like, I'm going to just make your life miserable by withdrawing, and I'm not going to say anything to you. And of course, even if they're not speaking, they're communicating. There's no such thing as no communication. They're communicating disdain. They're communicating condescension. Often they'll go into a high command mode, and they become bossy and forceful. So you can see that there's absolutely no reasoning with a narcissist when you're in the midst of conflict with them. Now, as you recognize those patterns or tendencies, this reveals a great deal of what's going on inside their psyche, and it's rather problematic. And I want you to understand what's happening on the inside, because they're going to try to make the difficulty between you and them all about you. But I want you to see, no, there's much more going on inside them that they're not willing to acknowledge. For example, the fact that the narcissist cannot handle conflict well at all, it reveals that they're highly threatened by you. And when I say highly threatened, I mean highly threatened. It's like, I can't stand it when somebody thinks differently from me. And there's only one way to think, and it's my way. There's only one kind of person that I can deal with, and it's the kind of person that thinks exactly like I do. And my logical mind says, why is that so threatening to you? Okay, so I don't think the same as you. Or maybe I've erred, or I've made mistakes, or I have misinterpreted something. Is that something that you need to be so threatened by? And their response is, yeah, it scares me to death. I don't know what to do with it. And then it reveals that their coping skills are woefully inadequate. Somewhere along the line in their early training, or lack of, they came to the conclusion, when there's difficulty, when there's strain, when there's some sort of tension between me and another individual, this is not going to end well. And so they already have that notion emblazoned in their mind, this won't end well. And so it's kind of self-fulfilling prophecy. They take it to the finish line in a very ugly way. And so their response to conflict reveals the fact that they're a deeply wounded person. On the inside, there's this touchiness. It's kind of like when you touch a person at the nerve ending that's hurting, and it doesn't take much. There's a real woundedness that they carry, and they have zero capacity for engaging with you, because they're so busy trying to cover up their own hurts. And you can see that for them, there's going to be no gain as far as they're concerned trying to engage with you in a constructive kind of way. So knowing all of this, and this is kind of sad, and realizing that you're going to continue to have conflict with the narcissist, and for that matter, anyone else, I'm hoping you can examine your reaction to conflict. Because one of the primary themes that I have on this channel is I don't want me, or I don't want you to respond in very similar ways that the narcissist responds. I want us to be different. I want us to have a better mindset. Remember one of my mantras, Dr. C, DRC, stands for dignity, respect, civility. And I'm hoping those are characteristics that we can live into even when the narcissist looks at you and says, I have no idea what that means. So recognize that when you do have positive exchanges with that narcissistic individual, you still want to be very careful. Don't allow yourself to get seduced into that, because there's a good chance that it's just a mirage. Over time, that person's egocentric mindset is going to take over, and the problems when they come will create these very difficult patterns that I just mentioned. So here's your task. And that is, you want to determine well in advance when you're engaging with that narcissist what your boundaries will be. And when we talk about boundaries, it means that you have a definition for who you're going to be. That other person doesn't set your pace. And when that person goes into their troubled and threatened and unwilling style of responding to you, you're not going to enter into that at all. Instead, when you are in conflict, I'm hoping that you can take that as an opportunity to say, watch how a healthy person does this. Can you think like that? It takes a lot of self-restraint, and you kind of have to rehearse in advance, but watch how I'm going to do healthy. That's my reaction to the unhealthy narcissist. I hope that videos such as this bring a benefit to you. If you've not yet done so, go beneath the video here and hit that subscribe button, and we'll keep the videos coming to you. If you'd like to be on our email list, and by the way, we have a brand new website now. It's called survivingnarcissism.tv, and on there, then you can go and join our email list, and you can get some bonus videos and articles. If you have a need for online counseling, and I know many of you have taken me up on this, we have some links, a link beneath here that can take you to that, and perhaps you can find somebody that can help you sift some of this out. In addition, we have links to my books and my online workshops and coffee mugs. One of the things that I want you to know in an ongoing way, I know I've said this before, I consider it an honor to be along with you on your journey. I know that many of you are really working hard to figure this out, and as we can do this together, then we're going to see ourselves as a community that says, I'm committed to healthiness. That said, I wish you peace, I wish you steadiness, I wish for you dignity. That's what you deserve.